thanks for joining us. This is a special episode. We have Melanie Brown. For those of you that don't know her as Brown, Melanie Hamlin. Thanks for being with us, Melanie, and
no problem.
Looking forward to hearing your story, because I know like a lot of us that did leave church and then have come back. You've been back for
20 years.
20 years you've been back.
Yes.
Oh wow, I did not know that. So that is awesome. It's great to hear, and everyone has a story. You might want to know why we're bringing on the different people, because like Melanie was saying, every story is different, and we're trying to let you know that your story is different, but it can end the same way in you coming back and finding God again. So thanks for joining us, and I'm going to put you on the hot spot here, and if you want to share with us part of your journey of when you left and when you hit rock bottom and what made you decide to come back and whatnot.
Okay. So I think when I started struggling was probably around 16. I think we didn't have a whole lot of youth programs.
Yeah.
And I think youth programs would have been really helpful for us, because we also didn't have technology that kids have these days. So we were always out.
Yeah.
Outside, getting into trouble.
Yeah.
And my best friend Tanya at the time, she was struggling at home, and so we were always plotting and planning on how we could run away.
Yeah.
It kind of went down from there, but I remember my dad saying to me, just finish school, finish high school, so that, you know, it's easier for your mom, and then once you're 18, you can go from there. So that's what I did. Literally, as soon as I graduated and turned 18, I left.
Okay. Yeah, I was gone by that time. I left when I was 16. I didn't know any of that. It's not like we hung out in the past like Eli. I know Eli's past. I know nothing of yours, really.
Yeah.
And so
No,
I think
we
it's
didn't hang
great.
out. I didn't actually hang around very many backsliders, but a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few. But yeah, so my story then, just the bits that I think will be helpful, is definitely that I got a job and I met a man, and I was naive. I was a virgin. I was innocent, and I did not realize the significance of the male
Parts?
that's one way to put it, but you know, their appetite for vulnerable females.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we started dating, and we were going to the bars and at the clubs and stuff like that, and I didn't really drink then. So, but I'd sit on his lap and we'd dance and have a good time. Well, after a little while, he phoned me one night, and he was really drunk, and he said, can I come over? And I was like, no, you shouldn't be driving. He showed up. Unfortunately, this is not a nice part of my story, but this is an important part, because this started me on my journey of choices that I made. Mm-hmm. So he came over, and he was very drunk, and then he said he couldn't drive home because he was too drunk. And so I didn't know what to do. So I felt like, okay, fine, you can stay.
Yeah.
That was a bad decision.
Yeah.
I was very innocent and very naive, and yeah, long story short, he raped me in a very aggressive way.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was very difficult, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to manage the pain from it.
Yeah.
And
it's not just the physical aspect of it, it's the emotional aspect of it, right? And like I said to you before we were recording, like I know so many women, not just from this church, but from other religious groups, that have said the same thing, that was their first experience outside of the church with a man, with a partner.
Yeah, and I think religious or non-religious, it happens. And it's something
definitely.
that needs to be a little bit more discussed, I think, because maybe more in the church than not in the church. It's kind of not as discussed as much because it's not as prominent, or maybe just not told as
to your
much.
point, that innocence, right? Like
it is.
There's so much, biblically, there's so much around men and women and being together and the sanctity of marriage and the sanctity of virginity, and there's so much that way that sex isn't really spoken about to minors in most church settings.
Right.
And sexuality isn't something that's openly and freely discussed in a lot of church families, regardless of what the religion is. But so I think because of that, you're not prepared for when you leave that church family and you leave the security of your cocoon, right?
Well, and I think also you're raised with really good and honorable men.
Yeah.
And you see the best of people
you
in
don't
the
get
church.
to see that bad
you don't
side.
really
you don't
see the
that.
worst of people
Yeah,
very
exactly.
often. Yeah.
Right. That's the thing is, and that's exactly what you said, because when I left, that's one thing that I noticed is because you're so guarded from that.
Yeah.
Right.
When we went to a church school.
Yeah.
Born and raised in church.
Yeah.
I mean, not that my home was like, my dad was an alcoholic. So it wasn't like I was so sheltered. I was around people who drank and stuff like that all the time. But yeah, I wasn't prepared for that aspect of a man and sexuality and vulnerable females. I should have saw it coming, but absolutely did not.
That's the thing is when you first leave, like I'm pretty sure most that have left, and that's one thing that I was discussing with Eli is like, that's why you have so many of us that did leave that have problems with finding your first job, have problems with that first relationship, have problems because you're just so guarded and whatnot. And you can't blame yourself for that, right?
Right.
And so I totally
I think
get
at the time I did a lot. Now I look back, now that I've matured, I look back and I go, that wasn't your fault. But at the time, yeah, I didn't. You said it wasn't so much physical, and you're right. It wasn't so much physical. It affected me so much mentally. I couldn't view men the same way anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So I decided that no one was ever going to take advantage of me again. I was going to be the one that kind of controlled everything, and that's exactly what happened. Is I went down a spiral of bad decisions. But I felt like they weren't so bad because I was in control of them. You know?
Yeah.
Like I used men for...
Yes, and that's exactly, here's part of, I'm just going to jump in, and that's what happened to me. Because same thing, I went out, thought I was naive as well, got into my first relationship, and things didn't happen like I thought they were, like how you see church people. It's like, oh, they're so loving and they don't cheat on their spouses. Well, out there it's not the same, right?
That's right.
So I got cheated on, and that's what led to
It
me.
breaks you, right?
It does, and then it was like, well, if they don't care, I don't care.
Yep. 100%.
Right? So then I'm just going to do the same thing that they did to me. Yep. And it's all, I guess you can't really blame church because it's your choices.
Nothing to do with church.
It's your choices. No. But at the same time, having learned maybe beforehand of how the outside world is, could have prepared us a little bit.
That's a big part of it, right? Is it's not the church's fault. It doesn't matter the sect, like I said. But being able to be more open.
It's a parental thing. It's not a church thing.
It's not.
Because my mom grew up in a day and age, though, right? That those things weren't talked about.
Right.
Yes.
Like, my mom could not discuss those things with us children. But I discuss them with mine. It's a different day and age.
Yeah.
It's now more okay to talk to your kids about these things.
Yes.
I never learned about STDs. I never learned about safe sex.
Yeah.
And it's not got nothing to do with the church. It's just that my mom always made those issues absolutely taboo. We didn't discuss them.
Same with my parents. That's not something I discuss with my dad. Now that when I try to talk to Eddie about stuff like that, I actually feel like my face turns red and I kind of start stuttering and stuff because I didn't learn from my dad to pass it on, right?
Right.
So it's like, I'll say a lot of times, like, wash your mom.
I think I'm like
this
opposite.
is a you conversation. You have the same parts.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I'm like opposite because it became so normalized for me
Yeah.
that it became more a business rather than a transaction of love. So discussing it is like discussing the weather for me
Okay.
with
But
my
I
children.
think that's how it should be. I think
Maybe yes and maybe no,
I think some of
depends,
it
but
has
yeah.
to be. I think that's a big part of it, right? Is there's so much shame, it seems to me, associated with human sexuality, and that's exactly what it is.
I don't think so much anymore,
Right?
but definitely when we were growing up, there was.
Yeah.
100%. Things weren't normalized that they are now.
Yeah,
Like,
and I mean, if
yeah.
you're, it's not that you don't want to assume positive intent and you don't want to see the best in people. It has nothing to do with that. It's about knowing that there are predatory people in the world.
Yeah.
That not everyone is good. I mean,
Yes.
Pastor Walker has said it how many times? Not everyone that goes to church is a Christian. Not everyone that's out in the world is a predator. But there's far more instances of it outside of your
Yes.
church and your
100%.
safe community
And I
than
think
there is within it.
as a naive person, you don't realize how alcohol and drugs change a person.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
at work, he was great. Everybody loved him.
Yeah.
If I said his name to that job where I worked, they would say, "Oh, he's such a good guy."
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever expected it to go that way.
Yeah.
But he was drunk. Maybe he was on drugs. I don't know.
Yeah, it does change you, absolutely. Alcohol and drugs do change you.
100%.
You won't do some things sober that you would on alcohol and drugs.
So that's what I learned. So after that situation, stories between, but eventually I ended up hooking up with this guy, and he came out of his bedroom and he had like a sandwich bag, and it was like, it was huge, full of white powder. And he said, "Hey, let's try this." And that was the first time we rolled up a dollar bill and snorted cocaine.
Yeah.
So this is where God hugely, I think you were talking about with Eli, when you say you look back and you see God kept his hand on you.
Yeah.
That night, 3 people snorted, and I had never done cocaine in my life, snorted that entire bag. Only this much was left at the bottom. He was supposed to sell it.
Wow.
So I blacked out for a large majority of who knows how long it took us to get through that bag. Here's what I remember waking up. So I woke up and I was in his house and nobody was there. And I couldn't swallow. And I was like shaking. I was like, I'm so cold. And I remember going into the bathroom and looking at myself in the mirror, and I was so white and I had blood coming out both sides of my nose. And I couldn't even take water in to my throat. Definitely I overdosed and nobody was there, and I didn't know where I was. I didn't know where everybody went. And I just remember taking a blanket and wrapping it around myself like this and just slumping down a wall, and
Wow.
somehow I woke up from that.
Yeah. So
But-
so you could have died is what?
100% should have died.
absolutely, you should have
so
died.
overdosed. I
Yeah.
just after you take it once and you're so high, you don't think, "Gee, I've had enough."
No, that's one thing, because it's something that I'm not proud of.
They
either,
just bring
but-
it to you and you're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, and then that's the thing, is you just don't
Stupid.
have that
Cognizant
of
ability
to
to
stop.
say stop.
You just keep
I've had
going
enough.
and you keep going,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, overdose is real. Overdose,
It was
especially
a massive overdose,
But
for
yeah,
sure.
so-
Took me a long time to get over that. And you'd think that I would have learned from that.
No.
But no.
I didn't either. So
No.
on some occasions.
And
but-
then I got introduced to ecstasy. That became a massive drug of choice.
yeah,
I was always on ecstasy.
wow,
Always on ecstasy. And then that led to cocaine turned to crack. Yep. Like literally
that's one thing
beer
I
cans
never tried.
in the bathroom smoking crack.
Wow,
And so those are drugs that will addict you
absolutely
for life.
for life. Yep, those are drugs that. Those are, I forgot. I had a friend that used to call it like a drug that repossesses everything in your life.
It does.
Because
It
your
takes
cars
over
get
you.
repossessed, your
Oh,
houses get
that's good,
repossessed,
actually, yeah.
right? So,
But
it's,
you know, when you're a young female and you're 110 pounds soaking wet, you don't have to work for any of that.
yeah,
That's what I found out. I had friends who owned bars that would keep them up late, open past, they have to close at like 2.
yeah,
Well, that's what the city says. They just close the door and the people who know the people stay
Yeah.
in there and party all night. So it led to a lot of craziness and a lot of stories. But eventually, I got pregnant when I was 19.
okay,
And because of the morals that I had in me, immediately I stopped doing drugs. I mean, I recall praying to God, please don't judge my child because of my mistakes.
So is your pregnancy what made you change and look
100%.
towards God, or so
No.
you didn't really hit rock bottom?
Not yet. No. But I stopped doing drugs. But I
Okay.
wasn't ready to go back to church yet. I was like, but I was praying. It got me praying again.
Yeah.
I reached into what I really knew because children to me always have been. I mean, I'm nursery lead at True Church right now. Kids are my passion.
Yeah.
I think from so many years of alcohol and drugs and poor choices, I tend to go with what I'm comfortable with, and what is the most innocent,
What you
beautiful
don't see judgment
creatures
from.
are children,
Yeah. That's one of our soft spots. Well, my soft spot is children as well.
right?
Like you've like
Like the little Chevelle dancing.
I know. Oh my goodness, and Mimi.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
time she sees me, she just gives me life. She's
Yeah.
so sweet.
yeah, no,
They're just so innocent,
Mhm.
and they're so sweet, and there's no pretense about them. Like when you live the life that we did, you see the worst of humanity.
yeah,
There's none of that in children.
no,
So anyways, eventually I got pregnant, and then I stopped doing drugs. I stopped partying. I cleaned up my life. I was praying, but not going back to church. Because I think this is something that also kind of needs to be discussed a little bit. When you leave and you've been gone for so long and you've done so many things, it's not easy to just say, I'm just going to go back to church.
that's one thing we were discussing with Eli.
It is not easy.
No.
It just doesn't come to the forefront of your mind. You look to God,
Yeah,
but you don't think about church. But it's interesting how God brought me back. God is funny sometimes. So eventually I found out they were twins, and then I lost them at 4 months. Thank God, to no fault of my own. I miscarried. And
okay.
so then I was in a real searching time of my life. I was like, where am I going here? What am I doing? Then I met Matt, my current husband, and we were partying and drinking, but I was not doing any heavy drugs anymore.
Mhm.
And he said, hey, let's smoke a joint. And I'm like, hey, sure, because weed, when you're a heavy drug user, weed is like nothing. It's like,
Yeah,
I don't count it as drugs, or didn't then.
Mhm.
If my daughter did it, I would count it because she's never done anything. But for me, who's like
Yeah.
cocaine,
Yeah.
crack,
Yeah.
speed,
yeah,
mushrooms, acid, you name it, I've probably done it except for fentanyl, and I never injected, thank you, Jesus. But no, so he's like, you want to smoke this joint? And I'm like, sure. And then he's like, it's laced with cocaine. And I was like, absolutely not.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. But yeah, so the devil was trying to lure me back.
lure you back. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
With just little things.
It's
hey?
just little things.
Just
It's
a little
just a
thing,
little
hey,
bit
it's-
in the joint.
Yeah. That's exactly
and
it.
to be honest, to be 100% honest, I was contemplating going back because it's the easy choice.
Yes, it's just
Because you don't
yeah.
think about things, you don't worry about things. Drugs takes your feelings and
It's a little
emotions.
number.
It's a number.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, and that's the thing is
Yeah.
just is that's exactly it's just the little things that when you're trying to do good, you're so far ahead and you're doing good. Like you
Yeah.
left those hard drugs,
Yeah.
and he doesn't want to let you go,
No.
right? He doesn't
Yeah.
want to let you go, and that's one thing that I found as well because I went from hard drugs right? I was heavy into cocaine.
Okay.
I was heavy into
So you understand.
selling, and I was heavy into inhaling and ingesting.
Yeah.
And
So
then
you know.
when I left, and it was just things would try to draw me back, and I was like,
100%.
well, no, I've moved on from that, right?
And
Although
it's hard.
I wasn't. It is hard. It is hard.
Very
Sometimes the circle and who's around you as well is a
Well,
huge
and
part of
Makes
leading
a
you.
huge
And to the
difference.
Right?
point that you and Eli were talking the other day, it's never just one beer. It's never
Yes.
just one line.
Yeah.
It's
No.
never just one night. It's never just one this.
Yeah,
It's
it's true.
one this that leads to two, that
That's-
leads
yeah.
to three, that
Right?
leads
And then
to
you're
the
back
weekend.
to the
that-
same old.
Yeah.
And then, like you were saying as well, it's one thing that at least what you did is, and that's something I didn't have, is you started to look to God when you found out you were pregnant and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It didn't come to me that quick. I went around the
Well,
whole
As
track,
I-
so to
As
speak.
soon as I lost the babies, I lost the Lord. I looked at him and then looked away again,
Oh,
unfortunately. But
yeah.
so and then I met Matt, and then he was an alcoholic, and I didn't realize it at that time. But I started dating him. There was something different about him. So I was used to men who just always took, wanted. There was no, and he always held back. He was like he wouldn't. He was so different, and so of course, it was intriguing to me. What is it about this guy? But yeah, long story short, eventually we went to Mexico with my mom and my sister, and that was very interesting because my mom, you know, what it would be like to go out with Amanda when you were dating out with your mom and your dad in Mexico. Of course, what are you going to do in Mexico? It's Tequila City, and they give it to you for free. So Matt was drinking from the moment he woke up to the moment we went to bed, and my mom's like, Mel, your boyfriend's an alcoholic. And I'm like, no. And I'm like, Matt, stop. My mom is literally commenting about it. Can you please slow down? He's like, hey, we're in Mexico. But then he thought about it, and we got drunk that night on the beach when they went to bed. And he said to me, you know that church you always talk about? So I had taken him one time to show him what I grew up. And Bishop, he's called now, but Pastor King came walking down the aisle after the service towards me and Matt, and I was outside. Let's go, we need a smoke. Literally. But then in Mexico that night, when I talked to him about him being an alcoholic,
Yeah.
he said, you remember that church you were talking about? Remember how we went? He said, I'm going to stop drinking right now if we can go to that church.
No way.
Yes, and he had never been in a Pentecostal church other than that one time in
Wow.
his life. And I was like, no, maybe not. But I recognized that he needed help.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, yeah. The whole rest of the time in Mexico, and like Jesse and him went on this boat thing where they were like grabbing people's head and like forcing tequila down their throat. He went and hid in the bathroom. He literally did not touch alcohol or drugs since that day in Mexico.
Wow.
Soon as we got back to Calgary, we went to church. We were living together at the time. We
Yeah.
weren't married, obviously.
Yeah.
And that night, boom, on the ground, talking in tongues. And
Really?
here's me.
I'm not going to church.
This is awkward.
So that's the thing.
It
is
took me a while.
What's crazy with your story is it was your better half, well, your other
Yes.
half,
Yes.
right? That brought you, but you
Brought me
still
back.
weren't. You still weren't.
But I didn't resist
You weren't
it.
sold. You weren't
but
sold
I
on
wasn't
coming
ready
back,
for it.
right? So that's the same thing with Amanda. And I tell this all the time, is like it wasn't my idea to go back to church. It was
Right.
hers, which was crazy. Which it's crazy how God can use anyone.
That's what I mean. God is funny
Right?
sometimes.
Yeah, and that's just
So-
awesome.
So Matt got slain right away, talking in tongues. And I remember Pastor King getting up there and he's like, congratulations to Matt. He got the Holy Ghost. And he's like, and Melanie prayed. It took me a long time, and I
Yeah.
think that's important to talk about because nobody condemned me. I want to make sure that's very clear.
Yeah.
But I condemned myself.
Yourself.
I was like, bro, I've been way too far.
Yes.
I know way too much now. Everything that I was ever taught and everything I ever believed in, I've turned my back on.
It's all in your head.
So every service I'd go up and I'd try and pray and I'd try and pray, and I'm telling you what, I had a belly button ring.
Can I stop and can I?
Yeah.
So when you wanted to go pray, did you feel that everything you'd done and everything that every sin you'd committed came rushing to your head, like that?
Yeah,
you weren't,
there was just too much there. I
that
couldn't
you weren't forgivable.
I couldn't clear the commotion.
The noise.
In the noise in
noise.
your head to
Yes.
actually pray.
Yes.
That's what I found.
Yep.
That's what I
Same.
found is like that I did want to. I totally wanted to, but it just felt like there was so much in there.
Yeah.
And I was telling
I was
brother,
trying.
Yeah.
I was up there trying. Eventually, God told me I needed to take out this belly button ring in, and I did not want to take it out. Did not. Everything else that everyone could see was gone, but nobody could see that I kept my belly button ring in, and I could feel it when I prayed. Like it was like I could feel it holding on to me. So finally I said, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And I had to take pliers and take it apart because it was a little circle. After that, I thought, okay, things are going to be easier, but it still took quite a long time. One day, though, I didn't give up.
Yeah.
I kept trying. I kept going to the altar. I kept saying, God, you gotta help me.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta take these things from me because I can't move forward. And
You got to lay it all down.
yeah, and I don't think even though I grew up there my whole life, I don't think I really knew how to do that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, though. He said the same thing. So he had said in one of the episodes that when he was younger and going to church, it was his parents' religion. It was how he was raised.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily his own belief
Yeah.
and his own conviction. It was theirs. It was shared, right?
That's a really good way of putting it.
It's probably very similar for you because that's
100%.
how you grew up. It's
Yeah.
what you were around. It's what you knew. So it wasn't necessarily your belief or conviction at the time. It was like a learned conviction.
And
right?
Yeah.
me drawing onto God myself.
Mhm.
Like, I need you. I need your help. I need deliverance. I need healing.
Yeah.
I need to be able to move on from all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I went up there. I'd taken my belly button ring out, and I come a few more services, and then one day I'm up there, and I'm just crying, and I don't know why, but I can't really say anything. It's just all this grief is coming out,
Yeah.
and then very audibly. There's very few times where I can honestly say that God spoke to me
Yeah.
audibly, but it was very audible. People were all around me and I wasn't paying attention to them, didn't know what was going on, but it just said, I forgive you.
Mm-hmm.
It was so, and that's all he said, and it was so loud.
Yeah.
And how can you not forgive yourself when he forgives you?
Yes.
And when your people forgive you?
Yeah.
And when everybody's been so kind and loving and accepting to your husband and your family, and you know, and I broke.
Yes, that's what happened.
Like broke.
Yes, it just feels like chains have been ripped is what I put it as, is all the weight, everything that was up here,
Yep.
I no longer felt it.
It just went
Yes.
in a moment.
And that's
But
exactly
it took lots of moments to get to that moment.
It took forever.
So I think people need to not have this misconception that as soon as you come back to church, everything's just
It's
going
all
to be
gravy. Nope.
No.
No, it's going to take a little bit of fighting through.
You got to fight.
Yeah.
You got to fight through your own thoughts. You got to fight through your own spirit. You got to fight through.
Not just
you have to
yours. I
fight
think
for
a lot
what
of
you
it
want as
has
well.
to be the devil putting that into you
Oh,
too.
100%.
Because,
It's a spiritual battle.
yes.
He wants to take you back, and
some of it's anger because I know for
disappointment,
me,
anger,
like even though I was the one that said, "Hey, let's go to church," I was still mad.
Yeah.
Why did I have to have cancer?
And I think that's okay
Right?
to be mad.
Like
The Bible
why'd you do
says
this
be
to me?
angry, just don't sin.
Yeah.
Right?
There's
And
nothing wrong with
that
being
was,
angry.
That was the thing, and like
Don't tell her that.
He laughed at me because
Take it out with God, though, not your spouse.
I will always like I'll say it right, like God, Jesus, I don't like your word, and you know what? Like when I got mad about whatever the fire and that incident and everything with them, and I was like, I'm done with this. But again, for somebody that's supposed to be my friend,
Yeah.
we're going to have hard conversations sometimes. And you know what? I'm going to call it out. And I'm going to
And I
say,
think
I don't like
Pastor
this.
Walker just touched on that, didn't he? He's like,
Yeah.
you're not exempt from going through things,
Right.
but you're not alone.
Right.
And I think that's important to realize
it's
is that they
difference
happen,
too, right?
but you're not alone. He's
and
there.
that blasphemy. That's
Yeah.
you're not being blasphemous. You're just saying, you know what? I don't like this.
Amanda, I've been back for 20 years, and I'm going to tell you something. I still get mad at God sometimes.
Yeah.
I go, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you guys know what's going on right now, right?
Yeah.
With my sister and stuff.
Yeah.
That makes me angry.
Yes.
That makes me angry.
Yep.
But then I get angry, and then I go, oh, sorry, God, please.
Yeah, that's what I did. Like. I got angry, and then when she got angry, I was apologizing for her anger.
I know.
And I'm like, why am I apologizing? She's her own person.
And see,
Smite her, not me.
I haven't said or done.
No,
something
you haven't.
No, you haven't.
No.
So I'm
right?
just saying it's normal.
Yeah.
And then, because then
But
you
you still have
you
to
get
get it
angry
out.
and you get it out, and then you go, oh, I'm sorry, please heal.
Yeah, right. But
Please
then-
forgive me for
but
saying
then
that or
you do
thinking
say
that.
right? Then
Yeah.
you do ask for that forgiveness, and
Yeah.
I think that's so much a part of it. But you have to be able to have that. You have to be able
Yeah.
to have that rapport, like you would with any person in your
Yeah,
life.
100%.
It's no different. You have
Yeah.
to be able to. You have to be able to be open, and everybody says, "Oh, well, you're a different person now." Well, yeah, I might be a different person now, and
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But
Bishop-
I can still
I'm
have
glad
those
I'm a different
conversations.
person.
Bishop King talked about that too, that you don't always just come to God crying and sorrowful.
Yeah.
You come to him like a person.
Sometimes
You're
you come
happy.
to him
Sometimes
mad.
you come to him demanding, which is true. That's the way it should be. And I'm learning that because I've always learned that, oh, you always, well, I thought I learned is like you always just come and like
Prayerfully.
just you can talk to him like a person.
So that's what I think is important, that the older you get, the more you realize the importance of communication with your spouse, with God, with, when you need help, when you're struggling. It's really easy to fall back onto, well, people don't notice me or people don't care, but you're not reaching out and telling people
Yeah.
you're struggling, and people don't always know. It's okay to be upset.
Yeah.
It's okay to be lonely. So 10 years after bringing me to church, Matt left. And my children were 8 and 10. And the whole dynamic absolutely changed. So if I ever come back on here again, I'm going to talk about church hurt and how I got past the big issue of Matt leaving church and what that meant for my family and how people reacted to that.
I think that's part 2. We got part 2 coming up with Melanie as well. We got part 2 with Eli. We're not trying to sugarcoat anything. We're not trying to lead you astray. These are real stories
Yeah.
that have happened.
Look where I am now. Both of my children are in church.
Yeah.
Both of my children are in church. My son struggles, but he comes.
Yes.
And my daughter.
And you're allowed,
happy,
right? And
I'm
that they're
happy.
allowed to.
Yes.
And that's the thing.
100%.
Absolutely, as long as they know that their support system is there to help them,
Yes.
or to bribe them.
Yeah.
So I think about the way that
We're not gonna talk about that.
that I grew up, right? So we grew up in a very non-religious household. There was always a belief in God.
Yeah.
We always said grace before dinner, those kinds of things, right? But it was never a go to church regularly kind of family.
Right.
But if I think about like what that was like, and then our kids weren't raised in church, but I know so many families and so many people whose lives were, if it wasn't church, it was sports. If it wasn't sports, it was music. If it wasn't this, it was something. And all of those kids that grew up with those regimented schedules of this and this and this and this and this, every single one of them grew to resent that thing.
Yeah.
Every single person I know that grew up and whether it went to any of those things, participated in any of those activities that their parents made them go to, every single one of them resented it. And I don't want our kids to resent going to church.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't want to force it. And Eddie and I had this conversation in the car the other day. And he said to me, he said, Mom, what makes you want to go to church? Why do you want to go so bad?
Mm.
And I said to him, I said, why do you not? And he's like, well, because I don't understand it. And I said, well, Eddie, break it down and keep it simple. I said, the biggest lessons that you will learn by reading the Bible and going through scripture is that it's you love your neighbors as though you love yourself. Mm-hmm. You don't pass judgment on people until you've walked in their shoes. Mm-hmm. And that you embody that same spirit with everyone you meet. I said, really, when you look at it, the Bible is a book about how to be kind to other people and how to surround yourself with people that believe in that same kind spirit. I said, how does that make it a bad thing?
Right.
And he's like, well, I've never really thought of it that way, Mom. Yeah. And I said, well, yeah. I said,
and also big for them to learn even at that young age that you're not alone.
Yeah. And
you're
I
not
said
alone.
to him, I'm like, it's not going to be something. I said, I can force you to go all you want. I said, but you're not going to get anything from it because you're just going to sit there with a mat on and you're going to not pay attention to what's being said and you're just going to be looking for the fastest way to escape. What good's that going to do? It's not going to do any good.
So with my situation, which I am not going to go into too much, I found it helpful being a little bit assertive for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But also being intuitive when you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I think you just really need to be intuitive as a parent.
Yeah.
Onto whether it's a push time
or
whether it's a look, I appreciate that you're coming once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope people appreciate that my son is coming once a week.
Yeah.
And that's a huge victory in my house for right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this is not a pushing time.
No, I absolutely.
But when he was younger, it was, and it helped.
Yeah.
But he was a lot younger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now he's stepping into his own mind and into his manlyhood, and he's about to be turning 18 and graduating from high school. And you know, when you're that age, you have to feel like you're involved in making some of the decisions.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have to let him make his decisions.
Absolutely, I completely agree.
But I say to him, I'm not going to lie. Come for mommy. Do this for mommy. Mommy doesn't ask very many things of you, and I don't.
That sounds
I cook,
very
I
Donald
clean.
Trumpish.
I like Donald Trump.
Well,
you better cut that out.
But yeah, it's
no, it's God's gonna do what God's gonna do through our children. We can only do our best and love them and teach them. Because like what you said in one of your first podcasts, those things, they don't go far from you, what your parents teach you.
No, they don't.
You know what you feel.
Yep.
You know the love that's there.
Yep.
And when you come back at it, you have to trust that eventually your kids, if they don't stay, will come to that point as well.
Yeah, that's one thing that even though I left, that's one thing I never lost was what I was taught and what I believed in.
I mean,
right?
I pushed it back into a corner. It's
not
like
absolutely.
It wasn't at the forefront.
Absolutely.
But when the chips were down,
yeah.
Oh yeah, it comes.
You knew
First thing you do when you're
Yeah.
pregnant and you don't want to lose your child because you don't believe in abortion and you love children as much as I do, you call on God, even though you're not serving. And thankfully for us,
and that's the nice thing about that. Some people are like, oh, you're just going back, or you're just turning to God because you're sick, or you're turning back because.
So what?
But you know what?
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. If that's the way He's going to get you there, that's the way He's going to get you there.
Who are they to judge?
Okay, what's the parable about the sower? Right? All of these people were working for $1. And then people came at the very end of the day and they're like, why did you pay him the same amount? We've been serving you our whole life. And he's like, hey, anytime, any situation, you come and it's the same reward.
That's it. That's it. And that's what we're trying to let you guys know, that He's a great God. You might have been gone longer than I have. You might have done more than I have and than I had, but God is willing.
Yeah.
And
always
it's not
open
just
arms.
if you have some sort of sickness, if you have some sort of ailment, it doesn't matter to Him. He's your Father, and
Don't
He can
feel bad to call
heal
on Him in your distress. Yeah.
And He's always there for you. I just want to say thank you to Melanie for being on.
Thanks for having me.
I want to say thank you to my sister-in-law, Leah. She's producing this one. This is our first time with multiple cameras. And I want you to please keep praying for Leah. We've asked at the church for prayer for her. Keep her in your prayers. Keep her family. Keep my father-in-law. And yeah, love you guys. Stay blessed, and we'll see you on the next one.